Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Now, Viktor Orban's Hungary has many people scratching their heads. Is he pro or anti-Russia? Is he pro or anti the EU? How's his presidency or his country's presidency of the European Commission actually working out? And what is his relationship with Donald Trump, and what might happen if Donald Trump were to win the upcoming U.S. presidential election? Well, a complex package indeed, and to help us understand it, we're joined by Botond Feledy. He's a senior fellow at the Center of Euro-Atlantic Integration and Development. Mr. Feledy, welcome to TVP World, and thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you, sir. Now, make sense of Viktor Orban's foreign policy strategy for us, would you?
Well, if I have to be brief about that, then practically Viktor Orban has developed for the last 14 years an extremely pragmatic, hyper-realist foreign policy. One could also use the adjective that we usually add on Donald Trump's foreign policy, which is transactionalist. So practically what we have seen in the last years, in lots of occasions, is when Viktor Orban is trying to hold hostage certain negotiations, shall that be the NATO enlargement or the EU budget negotiations, or even just simply vetoing declarations of the EU on Chinese offers, he is very successful in getting what he wants out of these negotiations with pure transactionalist approach. So that is what is happening also with his foreign minister vis-a-vis Russia. Peter Szijjártó has been in Russia for the 11th time this week since the beginning of the war.
Okay, all right. There's a lot there. Let's start with Russia. Now, what's he trying to do? Is he Russia's Trojan horse in the European Union, or is there some plan on getting the war in Ukraine stopped on a reasonably equitable basis? What do you think?
He has bets on that the war will not be won on Ukrainian terms since the very first day of the conflict and of the full-scale invasion. So therefore, that's what we have been hearing from Viktor Orban, that he wants to keep communication with Russia because he's already looking at the sort of post-war or post-conflict negotiations where he is expecting, and we don't know how realistic that is, but his expectation is that Russia and Russian fossil energy resources will be reintegrated into the European Union structures. So that is his bet, and now whether against 26 other member states this is realistic, that is his high gamble. He has been in talks with Vladimir Putin since 2009, so 1 year before his re-election to become prime minister in 2010. And ever since, their relationship has been closer and closer, including the signature of the nuclear enlargement of the power plant in Hungary in 2014. So ever since, practically, they have been meeting every year in separate locations, including the years of the aggression against Ukraine, also in Beijing the last time. So therefore, this relationship is certainly very close, but I wouldn't call it a friendship. This is also a very pragmatic relationship from both sides, also for Orban, using Putin and the Russian connection as a leverage in the EU negotiations.
So a pragmatic relationship, which, as you well know in foreign policy, is somewhat necessary, despite how distasteful you might find the person you're talking to across the table. Talk to us briefly about the European Union. I mean, on the one hand, Orban is saying, well, look, I'm just protecting my nation's statehood from foreign interference, for example, in elections, which is reasonable, isn't it? But the EU doesn't seem to like that. Why?
I mean, the Sovereignty Protection Office that he set up has been investigating Transparency International and other journalistic outlets that are pursuing an opposition agenda. So we have not seen one instance where it would have pursued or started any investigation into Russian or Chinese outlets in the country that are otherwise pretty visible for investigative journalists. So that is the major criticism, and the European Commission is now getting it to the European Court of Justice for further prosecution.
Okay, well, we shall see what happens there. Now, much has been made of the relationship between Orban and Trump, including a meeting at former President Trump's home. What do they have in common?
They have certainly a common understanding for Benjamin Netanyahu, Vladimir Putin, and all these autocrats out in the world. They have a joint approach in using the transactionalist foreign policy, and they are also on many political conservative agenda items sharing their views. That means family policy, migration especially. And we have seen instances when CPAC, so the Republican Party radical organization, has held a meeting in Budapest. So there are many instances how they are interlinked. And we should not forget even so small details as people associated with the campaign of Fidesz in Hungary are allegedly working in the Trump's campaign.
Understood. Now, you mentioned migration as one of the touch points between the two countries. But I mean, it's not just America and Hungary. I mean, Germany has tightened border controls. France is thinking of doing the same. And there may well be a domino effect in the European Union. So controlling illegal migration surely is something that it's a government's responsibility to do. Why is Orban getting so much flack for that?
Orban is trying to set up the EU as the bad actor in this game, who is forcing member states not to use all their force in countering migration, which is a narrative. It's a political narrative. That doesn't mean that since 2015, so since the first year of the migration crisis, even the mainstream parties, as you suggest, wouldn't be approaching a much more strict attitude towards migration in policy terms. So that's what we see in Brussels right here, that even the EPP, the European People's Party, is getting extremely tough on migration. And that was the bipartisan proposal of the Republicans and the Democrats in the House, in the Capitol Hill, but then on Trump's orders, Republicans refused to accept the bipartisan bill. So this is a political narrative being used and time and again abused by right-wing actors to try to keep their dominance in this issue. And for that, they have to get more and more radical. That's why we see Springfield and other items when Orban met with Salvini talking about and blaming EU for migration.
Understood. Now, very, very briefly, in the last couple of seconds, if you would, please, does Orban have a constructive role to play in supporting Ukraine's peace, if you like?
Oh, that's not a brief question for the last second, but definitely Orban has promised at his Strasbourg speech that he believes Trump would already do something before him being inaugurated in January the 20th, 2025. So that is something that he might have discussed at Mar-a-Lago when he met Donald Trump, the former president. I don't think that personally he, during his so-called peace mission, with which he started his EU presidency, could bring actually something in substance, and Putin was not referring to it when he was talking about mediators at a later summit. So he might want to have his stake in Viktor Orbán in this negotiation, but Hungary is definitely not the country that will mediate.
Not involved in the mediation. Mr. Feledy, thank you very much indeed for your insights. Come and see us again soon. Have a good day.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's all from us in this episode of World Talks. Don't go away. There's lots more coming up. Bye for now.